Well, hi everybody, and welcome to our 65th session. I didn't actually realize it was so many, Andrea, and it's been quite a ride. So welcome, Johann. Johann is one of my favorite and naughtiest winemakers from South Africa. It is always a pleasure to taste with him or to talk to him, because his knowledge is just so exceptional, and he's also a very big innovator in the cellar, and there's always an experiment or two or three or four on the go, right underneath there where he's sitting actually. So Johann was a student at Elsenburg Agricultural College, and before he joined Benguela Cove, he was the cellar master at the KWV, where he implemented a whole lot of new brands, and specifically a top-end brand of the Mentors, which is available here in the UK actually. Gorgeous wines, and in fact some of them have just done extremely well at Decanter and IWSC, and Johann must have had a hand in some of them, I think, because they're quite old. He's also been the Diners Club Winemaker of the Year, which is quite a feat. He has had more trophies put on his desk than most winemakers I know, so that is quite an accolade for him. At the moment, he's making wine at Benguela Cove, which is in Bot River. Am I right, Johann? Is that the designation of it?
Yep.
Near Hermanus. So it's near the Hemel and Aarde Valley in South Africa, which is quite cool because it's on a lagoon. And he's also planted the first pinotage in the UK at Leonards Lee in Sussex. And we can all look forward to some bubbly, English bubbly, made with pinotage very shortly. I think in 2024, the first bottle will be on the market. So be on the lookout for that. For those of you who asked for a bottle of wine, I can see Dominic had a huge glass there just now, but now he's put his picture off, so we can't see how much he's drinking. There we go. Take it away.
Thank you, Winnie. I'm a bit nervous after that intro because I'm nervous. The expectations are quite high, and but let's see how it goes. Thanks for the opportunity, and thank you for everyone that's joined. Happy to see that some of you did get your wines in time. For the others, it's hopefully still on their way. And those that we couldn't reach, especially in some of the European countries, we couldn't get the samples out to, well, you guys will have to come and visit, and I'll take extra special care of you guys. So, I mean, it's been a while since everyone has traveled. Not everyone has been to South Africa, so I thought it might be better to explain and maybe take you on a bit of a journey by means of a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation. So if you're like me and you hear the word PowerPoint, you get all nervous and start to panic, but this is not a master class or anything. So it's just informal and relaxed. And as Andrea said, please stop and ask questions, because that helps me a lot into get you the information that you're looking for. So for Angela and Winnie, you guys need to pretend that you've not seen or heard any of this before. Okay, if you can just let me know if you can see my screen, that will help by a thumbs up. Andrea, can you?
Yeah, that's great.
All right. So Benguela Cove wine estate, but maybe just I take it that most of you have been to South Africa or are familiar with South Africa. Most of the winemaking happens down at the southern tip of the African continent, which is this little section, well, south, but it's called the Western Cape. And these little colored sections are all the different grape growing regions or appellations, if you like. So it all started for South Africa as a winemaking country back in 1652, when the Dutch were exploring the east and discovered the Cape of Good Hope and set up like a trading post, because this was a nice halfway stop between Europe and the east. As I said, the Dutch discovered it. They also initiated the planting of vines. And in 1659, the 2nd of Feb, the first wines were made in the Cape. And the reason why we know this is because it was an actual diary entry into this gentleman's book. So South Africa, just for interest's sake, is the only wine-making country in the world that knows the exact date of which the first wines were made. Just some other interesting facts on South Africa and the Western Cape is we've got the oldest viticultural soils in the world that we grow our vines on. We've got these two big bodies of water, the two oceans on each side of the country, and the Western Cape, which influences the climate and the winemaking conditions quite a bit. Lots of mountain ranges, lots of slopes, very diverse soil types. So there's no one piece of flat land. It's every 50 kilometers, every 30 minutes you drive, you're in a totally different space in terms of altitude, soil types, proximity to the ocean. So it keeps on changing over and over. And for me, always the best example of just how diverse it is down here in the Western Cape is we've got more plant species just in the Western Cape than the entire Northern Hemisphere combined, just to you want to wrap your head around that. And that's maybe also why we don't have a signature grape or signature grapes like the Aussies has got Chardonnay, New Zealand has got Sauvignon, or Argentina's got Malbec. We don't. Yes, maybe we're better known for Chenin Blanc and Pinotage, but they're by no means our signature grapes. And because it's so diverse in our grape growing conditions, we don't stand for one or two specific wines. So, but what has happened is all the regions have kind of figured out what they need to focus on and what grapes are best suited to them. So therefore, what you see on this picture, all the various different pockets, because all the grape growing conditions in these pockets are just so different. We're in this yellow section that I'm showing out now. It is called the Walker Bay appellation. And so you've got the Benguela current passing by on just next to the property. So we in Walker Bay, there's a town called Hermanus, maybe the second most visited town in South Africa after Cape Town. Known for many things. So it's a big tourist destination, but well known for its beaches, its whales, of course, its restaurant scene, but more importantly, its wines for today. So this is where we're situated. It's just as you enter into Hermanus. So we kind of the gateway into the bigger Walker Bay wine region. So Benguela Cove, the property is what I'm showing out here. Now you'll see those little patches of land. Those are all little vineyard blocks. So the vines that we have planted today have been planted, what is it now, 21 years ago. So those were the first ever vines to be planted on this piece of land. So it was completely uncharted waters as far as grape growing goes. No one ever dared having a vineyard that close to the ocean. And even though we're surrounded by a lot of water, it's very dry. So obviously this lagoon that you see here opens up into the ocean. By the time this photo was taken, it was closed. But all of this is salt water, so not suitable for irrigation. So dry, fairly poor soils, lots of wind. So if you open a viticultural textbook, this would be a great example of where not to have a vineyard. The climate conditions is just too much against what has historically been seen as ideal for grape growing. We now know today that, and there's many examples of this across the world, is that those vineyards that are planted in what is seen as marginal in terms of grape growing, the one thing that all those vineyards have in common is that they've got a really unique identity or style or character to them that you can't necessarily find somewhere else. And Benguela Cove for me was always, I mean, having worked with these grapes prior to joining, and it was just always a standout in terms of the style of the wines just being completely different from anything from across the Western Cape. So obviously the vines struggled when they were young and took a year or two to get into production. But vines are amazing things. They eventually do adapt. We don't have any more salt burn. They've adapted to the wind. So yeah, it's amazing how they've adapted over the year. Back then they planted, they took a shotgun approach and planted various red grapes, white grapes, varietals, not being sure what was going to work in these growing conditions. Today we're obviously in a much better position. What they also quite cleverly did is they planted the whole property with various clones of the same grape. So it's planted, let's say, with 6 clones of Sauvignon, 5 clones of Syrah, 4 clones of Cabernet, and. The property that you see here, even though it's just 60 hectares, so it's got the capacity to produce roughly 500,000 bottles, to give you a better understanding, but 60 hectares with 5 different soil types, so complete freak of nature. I'm still trying to understand and talk to people and investigate how this is possible, that you've got such diverse soil types on one property. But what I'm trying to get across is they've also planted all the grape varietals on all 5 the different soil types. And then to add to that, even though this looks flat, the whole property is like a bell shape. So these are northern slopes, southern slopes, western slopes at the front, and eastern at the back. Also went and planted all the grapes on not only on different soil types, but also on different slopes, just to fully understand all the complexities that there is. So that's why you see all these little micro vineyards all over, lots of small ones. Complete nightmare to manage and to farm. But the beauty of it is in the winery, you've got all this wonderful components to work with. Because as you know, Syrah on a northern slope compared to a southern slope, on chalk soils compared to quartz stone, they're all completely different wines. And the winery we designed only, 13 years after the vines were planted, so we could custom build the winery around the vineyard. Okay. So I've often been teased by fellow winemakers for making wine on the beach. It's not quite the case. Lower down, there's a bit of sand, but if you walk up 20 meters, you start hitting all these various soil types. So a little bit of shale that we've got, quite a bit of this coffee, stone, iron-rich soils, some decomposed granites, chalk, which is quite bizarre. It's not something that's common around the Western Cape. And then some quartz stones. Obviously, I've cleaned these up a bit, but those are all the different soil types. So very interesting having all these and seeing how they interact with the various grapes. I explained the slopes, so quite a very steep slopes running all the way down to the water's edge, both sides of the property. And then, yeah, as you can imagine, all these vineyards facing the Atlantic. That's the cold Benguela current passing by, and obviously making this bay or a cove, from there the name Benguela Cove. Prevailing winds, it's the southeaster, just blows like clockwork every morning, every afternoon at 12, between 12 and 1. It's like someone pushes a button and these winds start blowing over the property. So what do you get from naturally stressed vines, poor soil, low rainfall, wind? Is much smaller canopies, lower yield, smaller bunches, smaller berries. And yeah, you've guessed it, with all of that, more intense tannin, flavor, color, and everything that comes along with it. So what is nice, and I think that really makes the difference in the wines from Benguela Cove, is these vines aren't manipulated. Sure. Question?
Just one question, sorry. Neil was asking, while you talk about the elevation, what is the highest elevation in Benguela for the vineyard?
Good question. So the lowest vineyard is 2.7 meter above sea level, which we think, apart from a few vines in Holland, these might be the lowest vineyards in the world. And the highest point is about 55 meters. So cool climate as a function of proximity to the ocean, definitely not altitude. So what is nice about these is that we don't have to manipulate the canopy management and these vines to give us a lower yield and more concentrated fruit. This is all done by nature. We don't touch or intervene whatsoever with these vines. The yield and the berry size is just a function of the surroundings. And you can see this vine on this picture is about 18 years of age, and it still looks like a 4 or 5 year old vine in a very fertile soil irrigated region. There's a saying that all good wines have a view of the ocean, so that photo is just a proof of that. But then it's not all doom and gloom, you know, that the vines are a little bit stressed and you know, smaller berries, but I just, you know, it's not all bad, and people don't always believe me when I say that grapes actually like growing in this part of the world. So I just went and took a close-up shot of one of the bunches, so you can just see that they really are happy. It's not just me telling you this story. The owner of the property is a lady called Penny Streeter. She took ownership of the property in 2013. At that time, Benguela Cove was selling off all its grapes. So the grapes were going all over locally and across the mountain to various wine regions. So a lot of people were making great wines off the property except Benguela Cove itself. Penny wasn't all for that idea. At that time, I was one of the people buying grapes from the property, and I said, you guys just need to come and taste at least what is coming from your property, because they bought a vineyard. I had no idea what it is they bought, and I said, it's not just a vineyard. In my opinion, it's one of the gems of the Western Cape. So I invited them over and said, just come and understand what it is that you're growing. And I could see the hamster started spinning, and they got more and more into wine and wanted to understand other regions' wines and how it compares with theirs. And it was about 2 years later, I got the phone call that Penny wanted to ask if I could assist her in doing the winery. So we've teamed up to fast forward with Benguela Cove. The planning for the winery started, and in 2017 it was completed, and we did our first vintage. So even though the vines have been around for 20 plus years as a wine producing brand as Benguela Cove, we still brand new at it. We've only just completed our fifth vintage this year. But what a great position to be in, to start a new brand with vines of which the youngest is 14 years of age. So that gave us a bit of a head start in terms of kicking off with quality straight away. So that's the facility now when you come and visit. So there's also a restaurant, obviously wine tasting, Hermanus being quite a popular tourist destination, art galleries and all sorts of stuff that's on offer for visitors. The winery today is a 500-ton cellar. So we've equipped it with a mixture of what is new and cutting edge, but we've also went all the way back, you know, and installed equipment that was available to winemakers 300-400 years ago, just to see the influence of that on the wines. As Winnie mentioned, we love experimenting, playing around, trying out different things. And I think apart from enjoying it, there's so much catching up to do for us as a new winery. We don't have 100 years of winemaking history that got passed on over the years. So we experiment quite a lot to understand the soils, the clones, the slopes, and how to best go about them all in the winery. So just to take the learnings from all of that. there's some more. So all our wines, and this is such a misused term globally, is the whole sustainability thing. For South African wines, it's a little bit different. It's an actual certification. It's not just something we can drop in there when we do a tasting. So we do get audited on, do we go about things in a sustainable way? And then it's also an integrity seal or accreditation. So if it says Cabernet from Walker Bay, from the 2017 vintage, it is all of those facts in there. It's not just, we're just highly regulated as an industry. And then we've also got some labor accreditations, which is obviously as important as anything else. You know, I'm a big believer that winemaking is the biggest team sport there is. From the boys and girls in the vineyard to the cellar team to the winemaker, everybody is equally important. So our labor force and our team is a big part and very important for us. We're very fortunate with the amount of wind we have, even though it's not great for going to the beach, but for growing grapes, with the wind, we use about 20% of what would normally be used in terms of pesticides. But having said that, and herbicides, the approach we take, because we're all living on the farm as well, is we're not certified organic or biodynamic or any of those, but we do follow most of the principles, or the ones that we feel is relevant to what we do. So we use a lot of natural predators like ducks and wasps and insects feeding on other insects. So it's a whole full circle approach. Just some more images of the property. Quick introduction to the range, should you ever come across them. With having such a diverse fruit source with slopes and soil, we obviously get very different wines, even though it's all from the one property. So we've got our Lighthouse collection, which is dedicated to those vineyards that is more fruity, vibrant, more aromatic whites. Obviously makes sense to have a rosé in there, but also those reds that are softer, juicier in terms of tannins that we release a little bit younger. So we've even got a working lighthouse next to the winery building. And then we've got our estate range, which I sent you guys, which is a selection of vineyards that the wines need a little bit more time in to come around, higher acidities, a little bit more austere. So they either spend longer time in barrel or in bottle before we release them. On the reds, a little bit more tannic, more structure. So these are later releases. So just stylistically a little bit different from the Lighthouse. Then we've got our single vineyard range, which is called Vinography range. And then we've got a flagship wine, which is a single vineyard Semillon, which next time I'll send you a bottle of this so we can have a bit of a session on this one.
I'm holding you to it.
Excuse me?
I said, I'm holding you to it, Johann.
That's
my favorite wine.
This is being recorded, so you've got
yes, it's being recorded. I just want to stop you there. Wink wants to know what is the biggest potential problem that stops you from becoming fully organic?
I think we're about 70% there. And if we really want to do it, we can. And I guess if there's a growing demand for organic, then I guess we will do it. But at the moment, it's just, there's nothing forcing us, and we don't want to do it just as a marketing tool. We do this stuff because it's something that we want to do and we do believe in. It's not. So I guess if we want to get the certification with 1 or 2 tweaks, we will get it, but there's not been a drive yet to, but maybe in time it will come. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Wink.
So
no, it doesn't answer it, sorry. I meant that is it the soil management or is it the pest management that is the biggest challenge for you?
At the moment it is we have some vintages with mildew and stuff that can just that's got the potential to ruin the whole harvest. So in an event of high disease pressure and stuff, we still will do a spray, and we want to have the room and the ability to do that and to save the crop, you know. So
Okay, but that means that all your soil management, so you is organic, so you don't use any herbicides, for example?
no herbicides. We roll all of our stuff, we cut them off. So, and then we've got on the strips, I'm not sure what the English word is, we've got mechanical machines mulching them back in. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much, Johann.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, we've got I don't know if you've picked up from some of the photos, but there's also some houses on the estate. So we have to be extra careful to limit the use of any chemicals in our farming practices. Having this unique location and having so many variables in our fruit source, one of the first decisions that we took, and I guess one of the easiest decisions we had to make as a new winery from the get-go, it was a no-brainer that we're only going to focus on making estate wines. Again, it's not just something we can put on a bottle in South Africa, it's an actual accreditation. So estate wines is a bit of a dying breed, unfortunately, because it's become so easy to go and buy in fruit parcels from all over to add to your wine. I feel very strong about showcasing site and, you know, appreciating wines and where they're from and their address, and having this unique spot and this unique character that it gives to the wine. It was very easy for us to go down the path of making only estate wine. So everything we do is grown, made, bottled on the property. And yes, it's a bit easier because we've got a diverse fruit source, but the whole philosophy, all the decision making from picking, from winemaking, from what barrels, blending, everything is based on how can we best showcase the climate, the soil, the surroundings, and what's unique to Walker Bay, and more than that, to Benguela Cove. So we're also part of a grouping that's called Cape Site Specific. If you want to go and check that out afterwards, it's a grouping of about 12 winemakers that are all focused on just producing site-specific wines. We're all scattered out from all over South Africa, so it's not promoting a grape or a region. It's about promoting wines with a sense of place, and the address being the champion, not the winemaker's personality or the winemaking techniques or how we can manipulate wines in the cellar. And obviously, from what you've gathered, that's pretty much what Benguela is about. If you open a glass of Sauvignon in Moscow, London, or New York, what you should get is something that really reflects this part of the world. Okay. I'm not going to bore you too much with what we do on the property in terms of picking, but it's a combination of hand-picked, machine-harvested grapes for reasons you know, why we do machine versus hand-picked grapes. You're welcome to ask questions. But yeah, we're in a low-yielding, high-quality region, the Walker Bay, so we've gone all out and pulled out all the stops just to maximize quality of the wines. So every single vineyard, we've got these infrared photos. So this is just one example from what meets the eye. This vineyard looks like one constant thing. You can't tell the difference in terms of the leaf color, the grapes, the ripening, until you do these images and you see, hang on, there's more to what meets the eye. And this just showcases that there's inconsistencies in this vineyard. So when we go and sample these grapes, the green section and these orange and yellow sections, we realize, oh, but hang on, there is a difference in ripeness and phenolics. So this is a good example of something that we will then go and hand pick, and we'll do different pickings on these different colored sections. So a lot of attention to detail, but that's what we enjoy doing. So everything then gets bunch sorted, berry sorted, quite a labor intensive process, but again, it's just adding to that quality with every step of the way. When you go, I've gone all across the world when we were building this winery and talked to winemakers and asked them on equipment and what they've got and what they use. And some would say, but this is the best or that is the best. But when you look in their winery, you'll see that they've only got one type of vessel, be it stainless steel or oak or one shape. So how can that be the best when you've got nothing to compare it to? So we've gone and we've equipped the winery with just about everything that was available in terms of stainless wood. You can see the different shapes of the tanks. So some of them are cylindrical, some of them close towards the top, some of them open up. And it's just, they've got different dynamics when you ferment. So if the purple section is the juice and the red section is the skins, the cap that being pushed up, you'll see these tanks behave differently. So thick cap, thin cap, larger cap, and with pump overs, if you put Cabernet Sauvignon in all three of these tanks, just because of the size of the vessel, you have got 3 different Cabernet Sauvignons. So we're in the process of figuring out, how does soil influence the wine? How does clones influence it? How does the slope, the row direction? And if that's not enough, how does the vessels influence the wines as well? And you'll be astonished by the difference, just because something as that we all not really take notice of, but the shape of a fermenter. So in the process of figuring out, this one works best for Merlot, that's best for Petit Verdot, and that's best for Pinot Noir, be it with pump overs or punch downs. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep an eye on the clock as well. And then, yeah, age it in various vessel types. It's one big learning curve, and I guess having fun while we're doing it as well. So there's no recipes. We make it up as we go, and we're learning. And the beauty of having all these equipment is not just for ourselves to learn, but also to share that with the rest of the industry and fellow winemakers. So, yep, in short, it's about connecting the dots, learning new ways, better ways, and ultimately it's about improving on quality year on year on year to always to become better and better at what we're doing. So, apart from being teased for making wine down by the beach, fellow winemakers from South Africa have started nicknaming us as the test tube winery, because we do all these weird and wonderful things. And they said we do enjoy them. They all don't always work out. Very often they backfire as well, but we never talk about them. We just sweep them under the carpet and pretend that everything is a success. So then there was, from the title.
Johann, before you carry on, Angela has a question for you about what other varieties you want to plant. Angela, would you like to ask Johann?
Hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Johann, I wondered if you had another variety that you could plant that you haven't already got, what it would be, and would it be driven by climate change, or would it be to broaden the spectrum of what we've got in the vineyards here? Because we're mainly French driven. So I wondered if you thought Benguela Cove might be suitable for maybe Albarino, or, you know, something other than the major French 5.
Yes, so yeah, thanks for the question. We've started narrowing it down, what we have on the farm. So we've learned, you know, apart from Syrah, which is flexible and performs equally well in warm and cool climates, grapes like Viognier and Mourvedre, and them we've discontinued. We won't be planting them. But the focus going forward, and even to my surprise, is that the ones that are doing exceptionally well is the Bordeaux red. On the red side is the Bordeaux cultivars, and on the white side it's Chardonnay and Sauvignon. I'll remember that I explained to you why the Bordeaux reds are doing well on Benguela, but not necessarily in our neighboring regions, which is Elgin and Hemel and Ard. I'm not saying they don't do well, but on Benguela, it's totally different dynamic in terms of climate. But to answer your question, our Alvarinho vines have been ordered and they're in process.
Good.
Yeah, so there are 1 or 2 good examples that are coming out from close by, and personally I love the grape and the wines they make. The whole idea in 20 or 25 years from now, I want Benguela Cove only to have 3 or maximum 4 wines. But as winemakers, you are curious and you want to see how certain grapes interact with the property and the climate. We don't have plans for planting Pinotage yet, but I think it can be super interesting. Alvarinho is work in process. Marcelin is on its way. I think that can be interesting just because Cabernet does so well here. And then, I would love to plant some Riesling, but it's just such a tough one. You know, there's some realities in terms of who's going to buy it as well. So we're sticking with the Alvarinho now for the being adventurous for a start. Yeah. That and Marcelin.
Okay, thanks, Johann.
All right, so yeah, then we've got when about 2 years in, we were just about to complete Benguela Cove, the cellar, and getting ready for the first harvest, and the whole wine bug and the love for wine just got hold of Penny, to the point that she said, wow, she's and she loves hospitality, she loves people, she loves entertainment, and she said, but she started traveling wine regions of the world as well, and said, but how about a second property, and what about maybe somewhere in Australia, or they've been to Napa Valley. And I said, oh my goodness, those are all well-established wine regions, so you're going to pay a fortune for a property. Is it already established? It's not interesting from that point of view for me, because you know it's already there. They've already made it. And I said, but what about and Penny being from born Zimbabwean, but being business and everything is in the UK. I said, what about the UK? And this was back in 2015, 16. I said, from judging at the IWC, I was always make a point of judging or asking to taste at least the English sparkling wines. And I was always fascinated by the quality of those. So I said, you know what, with your ties in the UK and having businesses there, what about exploring that? For me, I thought it's going to be the next biggest and hottest thing in terms of wines from the world. And I said it's like Benguela, where we adventurous and pushing the boundaries and trying to do things that's not been done before. The UK would just be a similar fit into that, and both of us enjoy exploring and trying out new things and doing things that other people might tell you to not to do. So from planting that seed on the UK and going there to the day, about 4 months later, we started planting the first vines in the UK, just to give you an idea of the speed that Penny likes to move at. So we went over and we came across this property called Manning's Heath. It was originally a golf club. Had 2 golf courses, a signature course, which is obviously 18 holes as we know it. And then there was on the other side of the road, there was a second course, but it had this bizarre 12-hole course. But more interesting than the golf course, we were looking at it through a different set of lenses. Some of these holes were really well suited to have a vineyard. So we had a bit of a different agenda. And what you see here used to be fairways of the golf course. And there was a couple of fairways that we've identified that ticked all the boxes for growing grapes in the UK, in that they were below 100 meters above sea level. There were southern slopes, which obviously over there is warmer slopes. You can see from the photos that they are surrounded by trees, which is important for the vineyards there to be sheltered, to keep the heat in. You can see they're on a nice slope to drain out all the potential frost. So yeah, there it was. Penny quickly moved and took ownership of the property. I had to move into getting the fairways cleared out. We had a lot of upset golfers wanting to track us down. But yeah, soon after the first vines were planted, we planted that property only with, it was always the decision from the get-go that the focus will only be what England is best at, which is sparkling wine. So it's the traditional champagne varietals we planted over there. So that's what it looks like, what the fairway looks like today. There's still, as you go, there's still golf balls all over. But so that's Chardonnay, Pinot Meunier, and Pinot Noir planted. Some of you have been there already. And then the second property Penny had was Leonard's Lee Lakes and Gardens. So this is also still Sussex, which is about 5 minutes down the road. There was also, apart from, we would never remove any of the gardens, but there was some open land that was also suitable for planting some more grapes. So in total, sorry for jumping around. So in total, we've got 35 acres of grapes. So eventually we will be producing roughly, call it 60 to 70,000 bottles of English sparkling wine. So Leonard's Lee is obviously very well known for its gardens. If ever you're down there, please let me know. It is truly amazing. But more recently, we've added some vineyards to it as well. So these are also now in their fifth year and starting to produce grapes. And this, just to add a little bit of South African spice or a twist to what we do, we've planted a little bit of Pinotage, which is a South African grape varietal in English soils, which a lot of people thought was a marketing exercise. Was not, but boy, did we get a lot of attention for planting Pinotage in England, and not all of it was positive attention, but there it is. The first wine was made and it's just about to go to bottle. So the idea wasn't to make a red wine out of it. It was purely experimental, because all the barriers or all the difficulty for growing grapes in the UK, bud burst still with frost risk, too high vigor, disease and rot, and not fully being able to ripen grapes. Pinotage just addressed all of those things. It's late in bud burst, so it jumps the frost. It doesn't grow very strong. It's got a medium-sized canopy. It's got a thick skin, so it doesn't rot. It accumulates sugar very quickly. It's very early to ripe. So I thought, hang on, this might be interesting given the English conditions. Let's have a go at this. And when I mentioned this to the consultant who helped us with the vineyard, he said, absolutely. So we've managed to get some Pinotage vines in Switzerland, planted it. And the first year it was ideal in terms of English growing conditions, and we could fully ripen it all the way and made a red wine out of it. The following season, it was a difficult year. We picked it for sparkling wine. And that was always the thinking, is not sure what we're going to do with it, but if all else fails, we know Pinotage, especially for the rosé style of sparkling, makes a really good base wine for sparkling wine. So there was a backup plan at least as well. So yeah, there's a bit of a common thread between the two properties in that they're both cool climate, they're in new up and coming regions, and hopefully produce a quality that is quite exceptional and sought after as well. So that's us pushing the boundaries on cool climate winemaking. love a bit of a challenge. And believe me, both these two properties is more than a challenge, but having an absolute blast. And yeah, that's all we have time for. I've got my contact details down there as well. If ever you're around or you've got more questions or you want to send me a message or we can do a tasting at some stage, please reach out and let's stay in touch. Or as they say, seeing is believing. When any of you that's based in the UK or Europe or whenever you're close, please reach out and go and visit any one of these properties. You'll see it's all about wine. Wine is what we love, but there's also some of Penny's other hobbies, which is art. They've got a Michelin star restaurant there, also run by a South African chef and a South African team. So there's a lot of cross-pollination with what we do in England, with bringing a bit of a South African taste to it, but the same with the properties in South Africa. There's also a bit of English influence in some of the high teas and stuff that we do. So at Manning's Heath as well, which is the sister property, you can also taste the Benguela Cove wines, various pairings, vineyard tours, accommodation. So hope to hear from you guys soon at some stage. Is there any questions? I've been talking a lot.
Johann, Neil wants wines are available in the US.
Are they available in the US?
Yeah.
Yes, they are. They are available from an importer called Baobab Wines. They obviously distribute via various distributors, but it's from the last count, it's in about 27 states. They are available online as well. So if you want to send me a message, I can put you in touch with the link should you want to get your hands on some of them.
Any other questions? You've covered it all, Johann.
I did.
So
Have
now
anyone-
we all just need to go and open that bottle of wine, except Dominic's is already finished. Oh, there.
Yeah, so I sent you that bottle because I think that specific wine really showcases that strong sense of place. You get that maritime freshness. You almost get a little bit of a saltiness, a sea spray character to it. So the whites all have that feature, and some of the reds have like a powdery, dry tannin. And again, this is not how we make it. It's just purely a function of the property and what's going on here.
A quick practical question. What will your English wines, what label will they be sold under? Do you know?
Yes. Yeah, no, thanks for asking. I forgot about that. It's going to be under Leonard's Lee.
Okay.
And the first ones are due when, Johann?
2024. So we've got one vintage on lease now. We're in the process. I'm heading over first week of July to finalize the second year's one. So then we'll be bottling that late July. So now it's the waiting game, and just bottling and cellaring them away until the planned release is 2024 for now.
But at the moment, the wines can be tasted at both Leonard's Lee and Manning's Heath in the UK.
Benguela Cove. The
Yeah,
Benguela
the
Cove wines.
wines, yeah.
Yes, that's right. And available at importer direct from source prices if you buy them online. So great prices on them. Ad break.
And Johann, don't you just want to move sideways? I want to show everybody the crystal chandelier in the winery. And as Johann said, Penny moves fast. There are 6 of those chandeliers in this winery, and Vivian has already seen it when she visited South Africa a couple of years ago.
Yeah, so that wasn't me. I was responsible for the fermenters and the barrels and stuff, but the chandeliers was Penny.
Okay, well, Johann, there are a whole bunch of thank you, and everybody wants to come and visit you. Michelle is actually going to be there at the end of July, so we'll hot-footed down to Botrivier.
I'm not
And
sure, does Dominic want to say something? He raised his hand. Dominic?
Thank you. Yeah, I just thought I'd say a special thank you for the wine, which I've enjoyed. It's a very hot day in the south of England today. It's been very refreshing. I've had it with some fish and chips. And as the wine has warmed up, it's just become bigger and bigger, and really lovely texture, big flavors. And to say thank you for that. And very interested to hear, especially about the crossover with the English plantings of Pinotage. I was certainly curious about what this was for, and you've answered my questions in explaining that you did make a red wine, but you're really seeing it for sparkling wine. So I look forward to trying that in due course, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Dominic. And Liz would like to ask a question on English wines.
Yes, Johann, can I ask how the varieties have done at Mannings Heath, particularly? Because when they were planting, it was very firmly said that there were no frost problems at all on the site, but we've had some frosts since. Has Mannings Heath escaped the frosts?
Yes, so it is definitely there is definitely a frost risk on those vineyards, especially our top blocks, which is a little bit higher. So in the second year, we had quite a bit of frost, which wasn't ideal because we were still, developing those vines. But for the last, 3-4 years, we've managed to jump the frost. I think just because we were better equipped with frost fans and candles, and this year we had everything available, but there was no frost. So the Mannings Heath site is it's got more of a frost risk, where Leonards-Lee we've never had any issues there.
Well, that's
always the risk of frost, especially the higher ones, and then the last few rows at the bottom of the field, because that cold air runs down towards the bottom and then gets stuck there. So in an event of frost, those are the ones that get most affected.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I just thought that it was probably likely that you were going to get frost there, unfortunately. And what about the vineyard, the approach to herbicides and pesticides there? Are you trying to be as minimalist as possible?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's in England. It's I would never even, it would never cross my mind to go the organic route. I know there is one or two, but it's just, even in normal conventional grape growing with using herbicides and fungicides and stuff, even then it is extremely challenging. So yeah, I almost want to go as far as, we can't do without, no matter how much we open up those canopies, it's just too moist or too much rain, and the botrytis and everything is just too much of a risk, unfortunately.
Okay, understandable. Thank you very much.
Anytime.
Any other questions? Well, then, Johann, thank you very, very much. And thanks for cutting short your long weekend, because it's a public holiday weekend in South Africa. Not for the Jubilee, but for other reasons. And we look forward to, I'm certainly looking forward to the Leonards-Lee wines. I know there's a Leonards-Lee rosé at the moment, which I saw, which has got a gorgeous label. I forgot to ask you earlier on, what is that made of?
That is more, Winnie, it's more like a souvenir wine. So it's a South African wine, but it's just got we've got 3 wines that we've just decorated with the call it the signature flowers from the Leonards-Lee property, just as a a house wine on premise, but it's also become quite popular. So people wanted to buy it to take it home. So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy your weekend.